This week has already been crazy, and we're not even 4 days into it. I mean, it's only Thursday today, but it's been absolute chaos. Monday, we did Retake the Week. We talked about all the CS that happened over the sort of weekend, over the last 7 days, and then everything went to hell. I have a player's POV to watch today. We're going to do a little bit of Grix watching, talk about the heroic mess, talk about his journey through the scene, and, well, watch him farm Simple and Electronic. But while we do that, we're going to be taking a look at this Mongolz mess, what's going on with Senzu, talking about some of the general options they had, what they've actually gone for, and then also talk about this skins update that's just happened, which is fascinating, but also causing a lot of hysteria, a lot of panic, as everything always does with this scene. Let's get right into our game, though. I'm going to be watching Grix play some Mirage against Simple's BC game. Very interesting game to watch. And a very interesting player to discuss. Apologies, still had a lingering cough from the sickness that basically wiped me out last week. That's why there was so little content. It's been a bit of a rough start to the week as well, post Retake the Week. But we're going to be getting back into the swing of things. Loads of content coming. So yeah, Grix. Fantastic talent on Aurora Youngblood. You watched him on Aurora Youngblood, and it was clear that this team was pretty bad. They didn't play great CS, but he himself could pull them out of the dire situations they put themselves into just because he had that insane AWPing ability. Honestly, pretty strong rifling and pistol play, but on the AWP, in combat situations especially, he was fantastic. He could really drag them into games, hitting little quickscopes and little tight window shots that most AWPers simply cannot. His natural talent, therefore, not been overlooked. And he's had a few opportunities on a few different rosters since then. But finally, we found hopefully a final home for him in Big, where his talents can be fully used. Of course, the first place he went was Heroic, and that should have gone better. I honestly believe Heroic should have been the place he ends up for at least the entirety of this year. Potentially, if he shines like his theoretical mechanics show he could, then we would have seen him probably moving on, going into next year, maybe into FaZe if they were still looking at changing things up at the AWP position, maybe into other teams who needed some help on the big green. Instead, they drop him pretty quickly, and then Heroic's AWPing situation has been pure chaos ever since. This round a little bit rough. The team fails a 5v3 retake. Grix struggling to land anything, struggling to find fights. Just one kill on the USP whilst exiting. Not ideal. I'd say his rifle's good, but it's far from a true hybrid situation. I do think a player like Moldo was actually a more skilled rifler in many ways. But Grix on the AWP is where he makes the most of his difference, the most of his impact. A bit like Moldo in that sense. It's just when he has the rifle in hand, I don't see him being quite as reliable, quite as impressive and impactful as I've seen Moldo be at this sort of tier of CS. So yeah, the fact that he gets cut from Heroic so quickly was a really strange scenario. I thought it could be, a case of his personality or something he did, but we've not heard any rumors, any stories. Nothing's been confirmed. And the only going excuse is he's just not the right player for them playstyle-wise, which I find untenable. As a sort of answer, that just doesn't seem right. Here with the hero rifle, trying to make something happen. That's a nice shot. Flanked by Nexa, does convert. 2 on 3 now. Bomb down. Probably not going to amount to much. Yeah, Heroic, they do end up picking up Alcaran. It's a part of this weird sort of deal for Tanir, so there's a good chance that maybe Heroic just kind of end up getting forced into this by the weird sort of deal with the devil they've made with Tanir, whereby selling Tanir to Spirit gets them Alcaran. It's a strange setup. We've had enough postulation about this. We're not going to get too far into it today. But it was a strange decision. Then he gets picked up by Gun5, who are a team who, ironically, did have Tanir, have struggled since losing him, in terms of replacing his impact especially. And then, have made some upgrades in the players like Texi, but generally weren't that competitive. They brought in Grix. He put up some great numbers in the time he was playing with them. He ended up not playing that long before kind of disappearing from their starting roster, and I guess there's a good chance that meant he was, at that point, already potentially pracking with a few teams. His talent was undeniable. You know, we know that teams like Gamer Legion were looking to sign him. Maybe if he'd have gone straight to Gamer Legion, a lot of the big controversies and storylines of the last sort of 6 to 8 months wouldn't have played out. In terms of the heroic mess, in terms of Gamer Legion's AWPing fiasco, maybe things could have been better. But here, rifle to hold. Gets that adjusted eventually. Down goes electronic. Looking for more. Can't quite convert on that one. And shot in the side of the head by Simple, but JDC fragging out. They should be able to hold on to this. And they do, but it takes a clutch for Process. Okay, AWP's out. This is where things get interesting. You get to see what he does on the big green. This is his bread and butter. This is where he made his name. This is what really made him into one of those super exciting young players. The big green gun, he was dominant with it. Playing for Youngblood. Hopefully Big get him involved. This is a standard ticket pick. Pretty uninteresting by itself. And this is a very slow developing round. But the Mongols have been so good this year. You know, just to touch on them, because that's one of the big news stories. The Mongols, you know, have really been surprising people with their ability to keep just pushing themselves a little bit higher and just pushing themselves a little bit higher. Then as Vitality fall off, hell, they even took briefly, at least by the official metrics, the #1 space in the world. You know, they were the #1 team on VRS and I think briefly on HLTV as well. Like, they were considered the very best. And so the fact that they end up here with their best player, almost inarguably their best player, getting benched, is just incomprehensible. At the time, especially, I was just on a train, actually. Nice shot. And I saw that come through, I was like, huh? Why? You know, there's no... For me, it's one of those things where, like, I struggle to see a team making that conscious decision. You know, if I am the Mongols, and I'm thinking, how can I improve my team? What could change to take us from contending for the top to potentially being dominant? Obviously, cutting Senzu is not amongst those things. Not even slightly. So my immediate thoughts went a couple of different places. Firstly, someone's paid a ridiculous buyout trying to bring Senzu into an international team, which seems hard to believe given, you know, limited English experience, pretty young. It'd be a massive risk. Secondly, maybe they've decided they want to change things up in terms of their playmaking roles, and they've decided they can get a guy in who's talented, move one of the Techno or Mazinho guys into that role, into what Senzu currently brings to the table as the primary playmaker, and try to sign someone else to fill in some more simple spots, maybe change back their playstyle to something where they have some simplification, like the way they used to use Mazinho Techno sometimes in the past, where it is a lot more stationary, static, simple contact plays, early group ups, almost Aurora X. Maybe there's something like that they could try. Then finally, the third and most likely option to me was Senzu has fucked up in some way. Like, if I'm the org making this decision, and it's not the player's decision, we'll get into that in a second, he's just fucked something up. You know, he was involved in some weird fraud scheme when he was on NKT. That ended up being not glossed over, but it was dealt with, and then he was able to move on to Mongols. Maybe he's done something else. We've heard a lot of stories from players like in the Chinese scene, potentially having committed some pretty heinous acts. Not saying I believe he ever could or would, but just saying that if you are dropping a player, that's one of the more likely reasons. Just a player, especially of this caliber, of this quality, you've had this much success with, that's the reason you do that. In the end, it seems to be none of those things, and we'll talk about exactly why in a second, but, you know, just touch on this Molotov. Grix through, blocking off the right side, and then you set up a double nade. You just saw them pop here. Not a bad idea. Just a bit off meta, a bit untraditional to throw your molly like that, but yeah, there's good reasons to it, and it's, well, not worked this round, but it could work. Yeah, Grix really going back to this angle again and again. Very rifle-favoured sort of mid-control approach. You know, playing a player in ladder room, a player near connector, a player in the actual jungle. All riflers, rifle-dominant approach to that sort of mid-hold. So he plays Ticket, and it makes sense, but it's a bit passive. Doesn't fascinate me, let's put it that way. Nice and easy shot to Andu, though. There's a reason people play it. It's a good spot. Nice and easy shot to Simple as well, who he was 9-3 in the head-to-head matchup against Simple in this game. 6-0 in specifically AWP kills, if you look into it. Pretty fascinating. But yeah, so the final option as to why this sort of drop would happen is that the player themselves wants to be dropped due to personal emergency, you know, family, something like that. There could be a number of reasons. It seems based on all the things we've seen, all the statements that have been made by Senzu, it's that option. He's feeling a lot of pressure, struggling with his mental health, and has decided to take a step back from the game. Because the part of this that almost gets overlooked is the proximity to the major. You know, if you're a team consciously choosing to drop a player, you don't do it now. You do it 3 months ago, you do it 6 months ago, you do it in 6 months. You know, you don't do it right now as the major's about to happen. So it's only really an option that Senzu himself wants to be benched, or he's done something that can't be overlooked. You know, he's hit someone with a truck type shit. And it seems to be just a personal sort of break required from the game. It's a shame, and it's becoming a more and more common story as players push themselves harder and harder, and also receive more and more exposure. It'd be a good idea for a lot of these players to start using their agencies, or rather their agents start setting them up with sort of social media managers. People who can handle the day-to-day running of their social media accounts. They don't see the outpour of vitriol that comes with being a professional competitor. You know, and having fans, and especially gamblers. Oh, lovely. The fact that he gets pressured out of ladder room, right? Moves quickly up and still has the wherewithal to take this sort of slow peak. Almost hit the shot. That could have been a fantastic turnaround. And the nade does finish it off. Okay. Setsunito could probably do better. But it's a really nice play out of Grix. So that's a real conversation I think that players need to be having with their agents. You know, Senzu has been, you know, talking about this in the past, from what I've been told, or what has been translated for me out of his telegram. He has struggled with, you know, dealing with the reactions from the communities. The players really shouldn't have to deal with that. Firstly, of course, people should be decent, but more importantly, whiff shot. But more importantly, yeah, they should have a way to manage it that isn't just handling it themselves. Having to mute and block people and just simply not look at all the direct messages and message requests. There should be another way. Okay, I don't mind this pick, but lingering this long on it always makes me worried about getting flashed. But he is holding it for a clear. Oh, triple swing. Tabson also only goes 1 for 1. So, a decent attempt. It's much better than going 1 for 2 or 0 for 2, but still. Would have liked Tabson to get 2 off that distraction. Anyway. It seems the Mongols will be playing with... what's his bloody name? It's kind of a random Mongolian player. Like borderline semi-random. Yeah, Control Z, or Control Easy, or Controllers. Who does he play with? I forget. I forget where this guy played before, but he's not, you know... He's not a great player, but he's got experience. He is Mongolian. And he is currently not listed with any teams, but he is most recently on the Huns. He was playing with Nomad S, Eruption, in the Mongols in like 2017, briefly. Not a great player. But they're going to have to make do with it. Back to Grix, who's still finding kills. Just kind of farming up, getting himself into the muck. Involved in the action. Oh. Almost getting picked off by Nexa on that lurk. Throwing in a couple more interesting positions after that pretty ticket-heavy start to the CT AWPing. Glad to see it. I'm looking for this pick again. To be fair, you're facing Simple. Simple doesn't always take the subtle picks. He will challenge the other AWPer and put his money on himself, essentially. Okay, smoke pop on mid, spots nothing. There are 4 players in mid, though. Remains to be seen if he actually takes them on. This will be the final round of the half. Close triumphantly. That'll be nice. Just holding the contact. There it is. Andu down. Really quick shooting. That's something as well that I noticed early on in the Youngblood days. He is very fast. Great reaction onto electronic. And bang, down goes Simple. 10-2 at the half. 17-4 for Grix. We skip forward into the second half. This is a game with a 3-minute halftime. Let's get right into it. The new update added retakes into CS2, which I'm pretty cool with. Like, I was never really big on playing that many retakes in CSGO, but I thought it was something that certainly added to the game. It was a great way to practice. Whenever I did try it, I felt like it was more productive and more useful training than a lot of the other things you can do in CS. Now, it still remains to be seen if there's going to be... I've not looked into it too deeply. Oof. Hard fight to win. And I'm going to look into it, see if there's anything about, you know... Yeah, there's nothing really specific in the update notes. And having not queued a bunch of it myself, don't know if this is going to answer any of my questions, but I do think that retakes need to have some sort of elo involved to be useful. I'm not saying you have to have like a hard matchmaking style, you know, if you're 13k in Prem, you can only play against people who are 12 to 14k. You know, it's just take the people who are 25k out of the retakes with the people who are 8, you know? Like, that would be useless for everyone involved. So I'm assuming there will be something done about that. That's one shot. Not a headshot, but hey, had to be landed. Oh, and that's Andu down as well. This force buy has a little bite to it. Ooh, never mind. Caught in an awkward position. Get yourself tucked. Or actually swing for a fight. That's, yeah, no man's land, my friend. Right. So, what else has been added to the game? Molotov and smoke interaction logic has been fixed when there's multiple smokes active on the map. I'm assuming there was some kind of bug happening with a specific number of smokes. There's been some updates to some maps based on the community workshops. And then the Inferno visibility changes, I think, are very smart. Like, it's a cluttered map in certain places in certain ways. I do like the things they've removed in terms of just smoothing things out. Does it look a little less pretty? Sure. Like, I do think it is uglier. But it's going to be better in the long run for competitive play, so I'm approving of that. And then finally, of course, the trade-up contract. 5 covert items can be exchanged for 1 knife or glove. That absolutely broke everyone's brain. Everyone's gone fucking nuts over this. I personally don't see it as that big a problem. Because, firstly, this will obviously deflate the value of knives immediately. As a panic response, the value of knives will go down. But then, on the other hand, as a panic response, the value of covert items is going to go up. Ooh. Caught in the back there, but round's over. Lovely. Where did he see him? I could barely even see him. Okay, yeah, I was just... Yeah, I lost focus a bit off the flash. It was a pretty easy shot, Andu. Overstepping. So yeah, as I said, red skins, covert skins are going to go up in value just because of the demand to try and convert, trade them up into better and better knives. I'm sure there's already a meta sort of price setting being like sort of semi-agreed upon for certain collections having more value. The collections that I assume give you the Dopplers, which give you in turn the gem skins, the emeralds, the sapphires, the rubies. Those have always been historically the most valuable, and they are the ones people are going to try and trade up into. So I'm sure that's going to be happening as I speak. But yeah, the fact that you can go and get yourself a knife off of 5 reds, I don't think it's the end of the world. I really don't. As someone who's not been heavily invested in skins at pretty much any point in his life, this isn't that monumental of a change for me. I have skins. I'm not opposed to skins in the game. I just never invested in that way. And I think for a lot of people, it's a dramatic change because they're going to see their theoretical value dip. Especially people who have a lot of knives. Their wallet value has dropped dramatically. So I'll be curious to see how that ends up balancing out, how that ends up settling. Because one thing you can be sure of is that it won't just deflate knife skins forever. Knife skin prices forever. As coverts become more expensive, fewer people will buy them to then put into knives, fewer knives will be made, and things will find a balance point. That balance point will probably be lower than where knives currently are at, but I don't think it will be the end of the world. Now, there has been some talk about the way Valve are changing things. Now that knives are accessible through a means that isn't opening a case or the market, there's a good chance they are trying to phase out cases entirely. If that is true, I'm really not bothered. You know what I mean? So what? I understand the value cases have to Valve, but if they want to phase them out, they clearly have a different idea. For some sort of transactional way people can interact with Counter-Strike and make them money. They're not crazy, they're not stupid, they're not going to throw away all their money. Counter-Strike exists for 2 reasons. Inertia, because there's so many people still playing it, and have been for years. And then also, it's a cash cow. It makes a lot of money through market transactions. They're not doing these things to throw away their own income, their own revenue. They're not stupid. So be aware that this likely means a shift in the way things work, but it's not going to remove these sorts of transactions from the game entirely. I'm sure of it. Okay, a very slow sort of approach into this A-site contact, but eventually does happen. Grix, good combat shot. Ooh, good adjustment on Satsanito. JDC able to trade out Nexa as well, and that's game. Wow, that's a dramatically quick ending off the back of that. Very slow build-up on that round. So yeah, Grix still phenomenally talented. All of that stuff still present. I mean, this was a pretty quiet 24-8 kind of game, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like he did a whole bunch of crazy flashy stuff, won any big clutches, but he was effective in the ways he needed to be. So, yeah, pretty cool game. Just shared some thoughts as well across all the big news of the day, of the last couple days. Man, I feel for Senzu, and this is, honestly, I might DM some guys who I know are player agents, ask them if they are looking into this sort of solution where you would remove players from their own social media, you know, for their own good. And not necessarily force it upon them, obviously, just make them the offer. It just seems like the smart thing, the right thing to do. There's so many of these, especially like 17-year-old kids, like they just, 17, 18, 19. Hell, kids, just kids. Like, they need help with this sort of thing. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on Grix, on the situation with Heroic, and now moving on to Big. Be fascinating. One thing I didn't really talk about is the fact this has on Big. I mean, I somehow missed that. To be honest, not that long a demo. We're only at 25 minutes on this recording. I'm just going to sit here and talk about it anyway. Screw it. Let's just do that now. I'm just going to make note that we are going to be doing this. There we go. Just so I know for my own references. So yeah, Big needed help. Big have needed help for a long time. In terms of their talent on their roster, they've just been dire. Part of that is just the Brazilian. I've been talking about Brazil so much. The German scene is just kind of weak. There isn't an abundance of talented players. And so you kind of have to look elsewhere. They've already looked elsewhere for years in their academy, fielding players from... a lot of players from Kosovo, but yeah, a few different places that are not Germany. And so you just have to wait for this kind of move to happen. For them to get better, they needed to go international. Grix was a great pickup. Hyped, I think Hyped showed some of the most exciting flashes. Hyped exists in this sort of place in my mind of like, he's not good, but he's not boring. And I appreciate that. He really tries to make plays, make things happen. And sometimes he just overdoes it, overtunes it. And he's not got the mechanical ability to drag it back. You know what I mean? Molodoi loves, that crouch slide peek, where he just kind of like swings into the angle, crouch scopes, flicks, and hits it. And it's so quick, it's so precise, it's so reliable as a playmaking tool. It often masks the fact that it wasn't the right play to do that. Hype didn't have that ability, if you see what I mean. So, bringing in Grix, a player who can be a star, who can carry a game, at least has the potential to do it at a high level as well, is a net improvement. The fact that their team now has freeze calling, though, is just weird. Apologies. Crimbo being dropped, I assume is not directly related to Hyped being cut for Grix. That's obviously just a separate discussion, a separate problem. We'll see what comes of it, but I would have been more comfortable with this team having Crimbo and Grix rather than Grix and Freeze. That's just strange. Tabson a fragger again. Clearly he's not there anymore. He's not at that point in his career where he can be a productive rifler, especially not in like star roles in any capacity. So I'm just confused. The team is still probably lacking a bit of firepower in the rifle department, but with good calling, good structure, and a really strong superstar AWPer, they could be a very interesting team. I think this is sort of a new door opening for Big in terms of, sure, we aren't going to out-frag everyone. We can't play like Falcons do, like Aurora do. We can't depend on high headshot percentage, multi-kill machines to just sweep through other teams. But with Tabson and Prosus being quite self-sacrificial, JDC actually having some talent, Grix being a near superstar level player, hopefully. Currently it's all theory, right? If all those things actually manifest, and they do have great role players, they have one decent rifler, one really good AWPer, they could min-max like crazy and actually make some progress, make some moves towards being like top 30, top 25, top 20. These are not out of reach of a team with a legit superstar AWPer and a team who's built to support that. So yes, it's still a pretty dark time for Big. I'm still not sure they're going to be competitive at the highest level. At least they've got one player that can definitely do it. He can be a superstar. Like, that's an option for Grix. It never was an option for Hyped. And he never really had that ability. But we've seen it in Grix. Fingers crossed it actually manifests. And yeah. As I was saying, if you enjoyed, leave a like, leave a comment to me your thoughts. Sub for more. And remember that members support the channel the best. Like, that's the best way to put it. They get access to a bunch of bonus content. But also, most importantly, they support me, help me to keep growing, keep doing this. I love them. Please become one. But all right, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.